Bacteria and microbes have dominated human life for as long as they have been on this planet, but in some severe cases, some of these viruses, diseases, and microbes have been able to get out of control and have spread into pandemics. So here I present to you 5 of the deadliest diseases ever recorded in human history. Number 5. Ebola. Ebola is a severe, often fatal disease caused by the Ebola filovirus. There are 5 different types of Ebola virus, 4 of which are known to cause disease in humans. Ebola was first discovered in 1976, and bats are thought to be the most likely reservoir of the virus. The virus readily spreads to humans, and from human to human, direct contact with infected person or animal, or with objects such as contaminated needles or syringes, is the most common way Ebola is spread. Symptoms may appear from 2 to 21 days, but the average is 8 to 10 days after exposure to the virus, and include fever, severe headaches, muscle pain, weakness, diarrhea, vomiting, bleeding, bruising, and eventually death. Survivors develop antibodies that protect them from further infection for at least 10 years. The most significant outbreak of Ebola in recorded history occurred from 2014 to 2016, predominantly in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. 11,310 people died over the course of the 2014 and 2016 outbreak. In the US, 11 people were documented as having Ebola, 4 of whom have developed symptoms once back in the United States. 7 of the 14 had been medically evacuated from other countries. 2 had died. Number 4. Leprosy. Leprosy is an infection caused by the slow-growing bacterium, also known as Mycobacterium lepraeus. It has a long incubation period, 2 to 3 years, and symptoms usually start as a numbness or lost feeling in the defined area of skin, reflecting the affinity of the bacterium for nerve cells. Despite it not being very contagious, leprosy has been feared and misunderstood throughout its history, initially thought to be a curse or punishment from God. Leprosy sufferers were stigmatized, forced to wear special clothing or ring bells to warn others when they were approaching. Symptoms vary from person to person and tend to progress with time, ranging from mild, indeterminate hyperpigmented skin lesions to blindness, deformity, and severe facial disfigurement. Leprosy is still prevalent today, but usually goes by the name Hansen's disease. Globally, nearly 200,000 cases of Hansen's disease were reported to the World Health Organization every year, and it mainly affects people living in low-lying, humid, tropical and subtropical areas near the equator, such as India. Number 3. Polio. Polio is a crippling infectious disease that is often fatal. Children under the age of 5 are especially susceptible. Although periodic epidemics have occurred during the late 19th century, it was the spike in prevalence that occurred during the 1940s and early 1950s that triggered the start of the worldwide campaign polio vaccination. Polio is caused by the very contagious and resilient polio virus and spreads from person to person, most commonly, though, contact with infected feces. Feces can remain infectious for several weeks, as can food, water, or objects contaminated by feces. Approximately 72% of people who catch polio show no sign of symptoms. 25% develop flu-like symptoms, for example sore throat, fever, tiredness, headache, nausea, and abdominal pain, within a week or 2 after the infection. A small portion of these people will go on to develop more severe symptoms, such as paresthesia, which is the burning or prickling limb pain, meningitis, infection of brain or spinal cord, limb weakness, and paralysis that may lead to permanent disability and death if respiratory muscles are affected. And at our number 2 spot, we have smallpox. Very well done, smallpox. You made it to the number 2 spot. Not quite enough to get to number 1, but, not very great job. But seriously, the origins of smallpox have been lost in prehistory, but research suggests that it first appeared around 10,000 BC. Telltale pockmarks adorn the mummified remains of the great Egyptian pharaoh, Ramses V, and the disease is described in ancient Sanskrit texts. Smallpox is caused by the Varroa virus. Varroila virus. I think that's how you pronounce it. Mr. John, can you just tell the class what it is? I don't know how to pronounce that. Sorry about that. Humans are the only natural hosts of smallpox, and transmission depends upon direct contact with an infected person or infected bodily fluids, contaminating bedding, clothing. Airborne transmission is rare, although it is more likely in enclosed settings such as buildings, buses, and trains. An incubation period of up to 17 days follows exposure to the virus, and people are not contagious at this time. Initial symptoms are generally flu-like before small spots start to develop inside of the mouth and on the tongue. Within 24 hours, a rash starts on the face and quickly spreads before evolving into a raised volcano-like pustules filled with a thick, opaque fluid. These pustules may take up to 2 weeks to scab over, leaving marks on the skin that eventually become pitted scars. The yearly death rate in the 1800s was 400,000 from smallpox. That is why it gets the number 2 spot. Still, you didn't quite get to the first number 1 spot though. You're trash, dude. And at our number 1 spot, this one that you've all been waiting for, I hope. At number 1, we have, probably you guessed it, the Black Death. Well done. You deserve a massive round of applause because you got to number 1 spot. Well done, Black Death. Screw you, smallpox. Anyway, the Black Death ravaged most of Europe and the Mediterranean from 1346 until 1353. Over 50 million people died, and more than 60% of Europe's entire population at times. Many historians believe it started in the steppes of Central Asia, a vast area of grassland that even today still supports one of the world's biggest plague reservoirs, an area where rodents live in great numbers and density, also called plague focus. Plague is mainly spread through the bite of a flea infected with plague-causing bacterium, Yersinia pestis. God, Mr. John, please pronounce this. I don't know how you do this. Please. Fleas typically live on small animals such as rats, gerbils, marmots, squirrels, and periodically explosive outbreaks of plague among these subsettle hosts. Huge numbers of animals succumb to the infection and die. Hungry fleas turn to humans within 3 to 5 days of a bite. Fever, headache, chills, and weakness develop. Lymph nodes closest to the bite swell, form, and painful bubo. In the variant of the plague known as bubonic plague, infection may spread throughout the bloodstream and affect respiration in the lungs. With prompt antibiotic treatment, 80% of infected people die within 5 days. This you've probably learnt about this before, but it's still at number 1 spot. It's definitely one of the most infectious diseases of our time. It was absolutely horrible. So but still, well done to the Black Plague for the Black Plague and the Black Death for getting to number 1 spot. And thank you everybody for listening. This was probably a very long video, so even if you didn't listen through it, thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next PowerPoint presentation. And, well, wear your seatbelts, kids.